Gunfire echoed through the Afghan valley. A Marine unit was ambushed. Bullets rained down like hail. A female combat medic knelt in the smoke and sand. She used her own body to shield a wounded Marine. A bullet tore through her shoulder. Blood sprayed across her protective mask. Someone screamed over the radio, "Get down! Medic's hit!" She did not move. She just shouted back, "He's still breathing." 3 days later, she lay recovering in the field hospital. A convoy of military vehicles stopped outside her tent. A 4-star general stepped inside. He spoke softly. "You don't know me, Sergeant, but I know exactly who you are." Her name was Sergeant Anna Morales. She was 28 years old. She stood 5'1", 110 pounds. She was a combat medic with the 1st Marine Logistics Battalion. She had been serving for 6 years. She was born in Texas to Mexican immigrant parents. She grew up poor. Her father worked construction. Her mother cleaned houses. They gave her everything they had. They taught her to value life, to help people, to never turn away from someone in need. Anna joined the military because of a promise she made to her mother. "I will save people, not kill them." Her mother had cried when Anna enlisted. She was afraid her daughter would not come home. But she understood this was who Anna was, someone who ran toward pain instead of away from it, someone who could not stand by while others suffered. So her mother blessed her, kissed her forehead, and let her go. In the military, Anna was overlooked. She was small, she was quiet, she was a woman in a combat unit. Some of the Marines did not take her seriously. They made jokes. They called her Tiny Doc. They questioned whether she could carry a wounded Marine, whether she could handle the pressure. Anna did not argue. She did not defend herself. She just worked. Every morning she woke up before everyone else. She checked her medical bag. She ran 5 miles. She lifted weights. She prepared. She made herself ready for the moment when someone would need her. Anna had a habit. She wrote the names of everyone in her unit on the inside of her gloves, in small letters, so she would remember, so she would know that each person mattered, that each person had a family, a story, a life worth saving. When people asked her why she did it, she just said, "So I don't forget who I'm fighting for." The other Marines thought it was strange, but they respected it. They respected her. One evening, the unit received orders. They would be escorting a supply convoy through the Shamal Valley. It was a dangerous route. Multiple ambushes had occurred there in the past month. The terrain was brutal. Narrow roads, high cliffs on both sides, perfect for an attack. The briefing officer warned them, "Stay alert, stay together. If something happens, hold your positions and wait for air support." Anna sat in the back of the room, listening. When the briefing ended, she went back to her bunk. She quietly packed extra morphine, extra bandages, extra blood clotting agents. She whispered to herself, "I hope I don't need these." That night, Anna could not sleep. She lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling. She thought about her mother, about the promise she had made, about the Marines she had treated over the years. Some had lived, some had not. She remembered each one, their faces, their names, the ones who made it home, the ones who did not. She pulled out a small photograph from her wallet. It showed her and her mother standing in front of their small house in Texas. On the back, written in Spanish in her mother's handwriting, were the words, "La vida vale salvarla." Life is worth saving. Anna held the photograph for a long time. Then she tucked it back into her wallet. She closed her eyes, and she prayed, not for herself, but for the Marines she would be protecting tomorrow. The convoy left the base at 5:42 a.m. The sun was just beginning to rise. Orange light stretched across the desert. The air was cool, quiet. Anna sat in the back of the second Humvee. She looked out the window at the cliffs on either side of the road. They were tall, imposing. She felt small beneath them. But she was not afraid. She was focused. Her medical bag was at her feet. Her rifle was across her lap. She was ready. Sitting next to her was Corporal James Holt. He was 23 years old, from Ohio. This was his second deployment. He was a good Marine, steady, reliable. He and Anna had worked together before. He trusted her. He had told her once that if he ever got hit, he hoped she would be the one to treat him. Anna had smiled and said, "Let's hope you never need me." But now, driving through the valley, she felt a strange sense of foreboding. She looked at Holt. He was staring out the window, chewing gum. He looked calm. She hoped he would stay that way. At 6:14 a.m., everything exploded. The lead Humvee hit an IED. The blast was massive. A column of fire and smoke shot into the air. The vehicle flipped onto its side. Before anyone could react, gunfire erupted from both sides of the road. Machine guns, RPGs. The convoy was in a kill zone. The Marines scrambled out of their vehicles and took cover. Bullets tore through metal and glass. Anna heard someone screaming. She grabbed her medical bag and jumped out of the Humvee. "Who's hit? Where are the casualties?" Then she heard it, a wet, choking sound. She turned. Corporal Holt was still in the vehicle. He was slumped against the door. Blood was spreading across his chest. He had been hit. Anna did not think. She just moved. She ran back to the Humvee and pulled Holt out. He was heavy, dead weight. She dragged him to a shallow ditch beside the road and laid him down. Bullets kicked up dirt all around them. She could hear them snapping through the air, but she did not stop. She ripped open Holt's vest. The wound was bad. A bullet had punctured his lung. He was drowning in his own blood. Anna grabbed gauze from her bag and packed the wound. She pressed down hard. Holt screamed. His eyes were wide with terror. "Am I going to die?" Anna looked him in the eye. "No, not today. Stay with me." She kept pressure on the wound with one hand and reached for her radio with the other. "This is Morales. I have a critical casualty, sucking chest wound. I need medevac now." The radio crackled back. Static, shouting, chaos. Nobody was listening. Nobody was coming. An RPG hit the ground 10 meters away. The explosion threw dirt and rocks into the air. Shrapnel whizzed past Anna's head. She covered Holt with her body. She could feel the heat from the blast, the pressure, but she did not let go of the wound. She kept pressure. She kept him alive. Holt was trying to talk. "Doc, you're going to get killed. Leave me. Get to cover." Anna shook her head. "Shut up, Marine. I'm not leaving you." The firefight lasted 7 minutes, but it felt like hours. Anna worked through it all. She sealed Holt's wound with plastic. She started an IV. She gave him morphine. She kept him conscious. She kept him fighting. And the entire time, bullets flew around them. One grazed her sleeve. Another kicked up dirt inches from her face. Then she felt it, a sharp, burning pain in her left shoulder. She had been hit. She looked down. Blood was spreading through her uniform, but she did not stop. She could not stop. Holt was still bleeding. He was still dying. If she stopped, he would die. Finally, the enemy fire began to taper off. The Marines had pushed them back. Air support arrived. Apache helicopters roared overhead, firing at the fleeing insurgents. The battlefield went quiet. Anna looked down at Holt. He was pale. His breathing was shallow. But he was alive. She had kept him alive. She tried to stand, but her legs would not work. She collapsed beside him. The pain in her shoulder was overwhelming now. She could not feel her left arm. She looked at Holt one more time. He was looking back at her. Tears were streaming down his face. "Don't die on me, Doc." Anna smiled weakly. "I'm not going anywhere." Then everything went black. When the other Marines found them, Anna was lying on top of Holt. Her hands were still pressed against his chest. The bandages were soaked with blood, both of theirs. One of the Marines, a sergeant named Davis, knelt beside them. He checked Anna's pulse. She was alive, barely. He called for a medic. Then he looked at Holt. "Is he alive?" Holt opened his eyes. He nodded weakly. "Because of her." Davis looked down at Anna, at the blood, at the way she had positioned herself over Holt, shielding him, even after she had been shot. He whispered, "Jesus Christ." She took the fire for him. They loaded Anna and Holt onto a medevac helicopter. As it lifted off, Davis stood on the ground, watching it disappear into the sky. He pulled out his radio and keyed the mic. "Command, this is Davis. You need to know something. Sergeant Morales just saved Corporal Holt's life. She got shot doing it, and she never stopped working. She's a damn hero." The radio was silent for a moment. Then the commander's voice came back. "Copy that, Davis. Make sure everyone knows what she did." 3 days later, Anna woke up in a field hospital. Her left shoulder was wrapped in bandages. Her arm was in a sling. She could not move it. The pain was intense, but she was alive. She looked around the tent. Other wounded soldiers lay in beds nearby. Some were sleeping. Some were staring at the ceiling. Then she heard a voice. "Doc?" She turned her head. In the bed next to her was Corporal Holt. He was awake. He was smiling. "You made it," he said. Anna smiled back. "So did you." Holt reached over with his right hand and grabbed hers. "You took the fire for me. You got shot because of me." Anna shook her head. "I got shot doing my job. Don't make it about you." Holt laughed. Then he started crying. "I thought I was dead. I thought it was over. But you wouldn't let me die. You just kept working, even after you got hit. Why?" Anna squeezed his hand. "Because someone had to. Because you have people waiting for you at home. Because life is worth saving." Word of what happened spread through the unit quickly. The Marines who had been on the convoy told everyone. They described how Anna had run into the open, how she had dragged Holt to safety, how she had shielded him with her own body, how she had been shot and kept working. The story grew. It became legend. The Marines started calling her the one who stayed. Because when everyone else took cover, she stayed exposed. When everyone else prioritized their own safety, she prioritized his life. One of the Marines had been wearing a helmet camera. The footage was recovered and reviewed by command. It showed everything. Anna running through gunfire, dragging Holt, working on him while bullets flew overhead, getting shot, collapsing, but never letting go. The footage was classified, but copies circulated anyway. Every Marine in the battalion saw it. Every Marine knew what she had done, and they all agreed on one thing. She deserved recognition. When Anna was strong enough to travel, she was transferred back to the main base in Kuwait. She was going to be sent home for further treatment. She did not want to go. She wanted to stay with her unit. But the doctors said her shoulder needed surgery. She had no choice. On her last day at the field hospital, every Marine from her unit came to see her. They lined up outside her tent. One by one, they came in. They shook her hand. They thanked her. They told her she was a hero. Anna was uncomfortable with the attention. She kept saying the same thing. "I was just doing my job." But then Holt came in. He had been discharged from the hospital the day before. He was walking with a cane. His chest was still bandaged, but he was alive. He sat on the edge of Anna's bed. "I'm going home next week," he said. "My mom wants to meet you. She wants to thank you for saving her son." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "Tell her I'm glad I could help." Holt shook his head. "No, I'm going to tell her you're the reason I'm still here, that you're the bravest person I've ever met, that you're my hero." Anna could not speak. She just hugged him. They both cried. The next morning, Anna was preparing to leave. She was packing her things when she heard a commotion outside. Vehicles, lots of them. She looked out the tent. A convoy had arrived. Military police, staff officers, and in the center, a black SUV. The door opened. A 4-star general stepped out. General Alan Whitaker, commander of Marine Forces Special Operations Command. Anna's heart stopped. She had never seen a 4-star general in person. She definitely had never expected one to come to her tent. The general walked straight toward her. The entire base seemed to stop. Everyone was watching. Anna stood at attention. Her arm was still in a sling, so she could not salute. The general stopped in front of her. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he saluted. Anna was stunned. A 4-star general was saluting her. A sergeant. It was unheard of. The general spoke. His voice was quiet but firm. "Sergeant Morales, you saved one of my Marines. That's something I don't forget." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. He opened it. Inside was the Navy Cross, the second highest military decoration. It was rarely awarded. Anna stared at it. She could not believe what she was seeing. The general pinned the medal to her uniform. This is for extraordinary heroism, for putting the life of a fellow Marine above your own, for refusing to retreat in the face of overwhelming enemy fire, for embodying everything this corps stands for. The general stepped back and saluted again. Then he did something unexpected. He shook her hand. "Thank you, Sergeant. You reminded us what courage looks like." Anna finally found her voice. "Sir, I didn't fight. I just shielded him." The general smiled. "Sometimes, Sergeant, that's braver than fighting." He turned to address the crowd that had gathered. "This Marine did not fire a single shot during that ambush, but she saved a life. She put herself between a dying man and the enemy. She took a bullet and kept working. That is what we mean when we say semper fidelis, always faithful. She was faithful to her oath, to her fellow Marines, to the mission, and we will be faithful to her memory." The crowd erupted in applause. Marines cheered. Officers saluted. Anna stood there overwhelmed. She had never wanted recognition. She had just wanted to do her job. But now, standing there with the Navy Cross on her chest and a 4-star general beside her, she understood. This was not just about her. This was about showing every Marine that their sacrifices mattered, that their actions had meaning, that courage came in many forms, and sometimes the bravest thing you could do was stay when everyone else ran. That evening, a reporter asked General Whitaker why he had personally traveled to a field hospital to honor a sergeant. The general's answer was simple. "Because rank means nothing when you stand between life and death." She stood there. She earned this. And I wanted to be the one to give it to her. The quote was published in military newspapers across the world. It became a rallying cry, a reminder of what service really meant. If you believe courage means staying when everyone else runs, type, "I believe." 1 week later, Anna was recovering at a larger military hospital in Kuwait. Her shoulder surgery had been successful. She would regain full use of her arm eventually, but it would take time, physical therapy, patience. She was not good at being patient. She wanted to get back to work, back to her unit, but the doctors told her she was going home, back to the United States, for extended recovery. Anna accepted it. She had no choice. One afternoon, she was sitting in her hospital room when there was a knock at the door. "Come in," she said. The door opened. General Whitaker walked in. Anna tried to stand, but he waved her down. "At ease, Sergeant. I'm not here in an official capacity." He sat in the chair beside her bed. He was holding something, a photograph, old, faded. He handed it to her. "I want to show you something." Anna looked at the photograph. It showed a young lieutenant lying on the ground. He was covered in blood. A female medic was kneeling over him working on his wounds. Behind them, a firefight was raging. The medic had positioned herself between the lieutenant and the enemy, shielding him. Anna looked up. "Who is this?" The general's voice was quiet. "That's me. 20 years ago. Fallujah. I was a lieutenant. We got ambushed. I took shrapnel to the abdomen. I was bleeding out. That medic, her name was Corporal Sarah Chen. She came out of cover and dragged me to safety. She worked on me for 10 minutes while bullets flew over her head. She saved my life." Anna looked back at the photograph. "What happened to her?" The general's eyes were wet. "She died 3 days later. Different ambush. She went back for another wounded Marine. She didn't make it out that time." He paused. "I never got to thank her. I was unconscious when they medevaced me. By the time I woke up, she was gone. I've carried that guilt for 20 years. The fact that I never got to tell her what she meant to me, what she did for me." He looked at Anna. "When I heard about what you did for Corporal Holt, I had to come, because you reminded me of her. You did the same thing she did. You put someone else's life above your own. You shielded him, and you survived. So I'm going to tell you what I never got to tell her. Thank you. Thank you for being the kind of person who runs toward danger. Thank you for valuing life more than your own safety. Thank you for showing us what our uniform really means." Anna was crying now. She could not help it. "Sir, I just didn't want his mother to get that call. I didn't want her to lose her son." The general nodded. "I know. That's why you're a hero. Because you thought about his mother, about his family, about his life, not about medals or recognition or glory, just about saving him. That's what makes you extraordinary. They talked for another hour. The general told Anna about his career, about the Marines he had lost, about the ones he had saved, about the weight of command, about the responsibility of sending people into danger. And Anna told him about her mother, about the promise she had made, about the Marines she had treated, about the ones who lived and the ones who did not. When the general finally stood to leave, he placed his hand on her shoulder. The good one. You're going to recover from this, Sergeant. You're going to go on to do great things. And every time you doubt yourself, every time you wonder if it was worth it, remember this. You gave a mother her son back. You gave him a future. You gave him life. That's worth everything. After the general left, Anna sat alone in her room. She thought about Corporal Chen, the medic who had saved the general's life, the medic who had died doing the same thing Anna had done. She wondered if Chen had been afraid, if she had doubted, if she had questioned whether it was worth it. Anna decided that it did not matter, because Chen had acted anyway, and that was what mattered. Not the fear, not the doubt, just the action, just the choice to help, to shield, to save. The story of the general's visit spread quickly. Military journalists picked it up. It was published in newspapers and magazines. People read about Anna, about what she had done, about why a 4-star general had personally traveled to visit her. The headline in the Marine Corps Times read, "Because rank means nothing when you stand between life and death." The article went viral. Millions of people read it, shared it, commented on it. Anna became famous. She hated it. She just wanted to be left alone, to heal, to go back to work. But Corporal Holt had a different idea. He had been discharged and sent home to Ohio. When he heard about the media attention, he decided to do something. He started a petition, calling for Anna to receive more recognition, calling for her story to be taught in military schools, calling for her to be honored properly. The petition gathered over 100,000 signatures in 2 weeks. Military leaders noticed. Civilian leaders noticed. And slowly Anna's story became more than just a story. It became a symbol. If you respect those who protect others without hesitation, comment, respect. After 6 months of recovery, Anna was medically discharged from the Marines. Her shoulder had healed, but it was not strong enough for active duty. She could not carry the weight. She could not handle the physical demands. She was devastated. Being a Marine was all she had known, all she had wanted, but the choice was made for her. She returned home to Texas, to her mother, to a life she no longer recognized. For the first few months, Anna struggled. She had nightmares. She replayed the ambush over and over in her mind. She saw Holt's face, the blood, the fear, the bullets. She woke up in cold sweats. She could not sleep. She could not eat. Her mother was worried. She took Anna to see a therapist, a veteran counselor who specialized in PTSD. It helped. Slowly, Anna began to process what had happened, to accept it, to live with it. One day, Corporal Holt called her. He had an idea. He wanted to start a foundation, a nonprofit organization to help veterans with PTSD, to provide resources, counseling, support, and he wanted Anna to be a part of it. She hesitated at first. She did not think she had anything to offer, but Holt insisted. "You saved my life. Now help me save others." Anna agreed. They called the foundation "The One Who Stayed." The logo was simple, a hand with a white bandage, symbolizing protection, care, healing. The foundation grew quickly. Veterans reached out. They shared their stories. They asked for help. Anna and Holt worked tirelessly. They organized support groups. They connected veterans with therapists. They provided financial assistance to families in need. They did everything they could to help people who were struggling. At the foundation's opening ceremony, Holt gave a speech. He stood at a podium in front of a room full of veterans, family members, and supporters. 3 years ago, I was dying in a ditch in Afghanistan. I had been shot. I was bleeding out. I thought it was over, but then someone came. She ran through gunfire to get to me. She shielded me with her own body. She got shot doing it, and she never stopped working. She refused to let me die. That person was Sergeant Anna Morales. She didn't just save my life. She saved what was left of my faith, my hope, my belief that people still care about each other. This foundation exists because of her, because she showed me what courage really looks like. Anna stood at the back of the room watching. She did not like being in the spotlight. She preferred to work quietly, but she was proud of what they had built. She looked at the walls. They were covered with photographs, veterans smiling, families reunited, lives rebuilt. This was the legacy, not the medal, not the recognition. This, helping people heal, helping people find their way home. Years later, Anna received a handwritten letter from General Whitaker. He had retired by then, but he still kept in touch. The letter read, "Every Marine who has ever been under fire remembers the medic who stayed. You gave that memory back to us. You reminded us why we serve, why we fight, why we endure. Thank you for being the person who runs toward the fire. Thank you for being the one who stayed." Anna kept the letter in a frame on her desk. Next to it was the photograph of her and her mother, and next to that was her Navy Cross. She looked at them every day. They reminded her of who she was, where she came from, what she had promised. On difficult days, when the nightmares came back, when the doubt crept in, she would look at those objects and remember, life was worth saving. Every single life. One afternoon, Anna drove to the cemetery where her mother was buried. Her mother had passed away 2 years earlier, cancer. Anna had been with her at the end, holding her hand, just like she had held so many hands in the field. At the grave, Anna placed the Navy Cross on the headstone. She whispered in Spanish, "Mamá, la vida sí valía." Life was worth saving. The sun was setting. Golden light stretched across the cemetery. Anna stood there for a long time, just being present, remembering, honoring. Then she turned and walked away. If you believe silent heroes deserve to be remembered, subscribe to NL Touching Stories. Real people are creating and telling stories, not mass-produced AI.